everyone! In this video series, we're going to make a character using Autodesk Maya and a couple reference photos. Now, one of the important things to know about characters is that you want to think about their movements beforehand. Specifically, what do you need them to do? A lot of students think, okay, let me just make a really simple character and it will be easy to model, and they don't think about that movement. And one of the issues of that is like a character like Toad, who has these little stumpy feet, is actually kind of hard to rig because he doesn't have legs. And if I move my arm, it's easier to move my hand because I have that arm attached. And we think about where we have these kind of joints, where we have movement, and you want to think about those points of pivot. Also the fact that on most people, they indent a little, so when they fold, they don't necessarily fold in on each other. And I know that looks a little weird, right? Especially since depth of field is making my hands look very large. But think about it that way. Even the fact that like our neck, when we fold in, it moves, it moves, it moves, it moves. And that whole neck folds in a little so that we don't have like this grotesque, like, okay, I'm moving in on myself like almost a pile of mashed potatoes or something. So you want to think about how your character needs to move, and the simplest thing to model isn't necessarily the simplest thing to animate. So really having something with arms and with legs will help. The other thing you might want to think of is if you go ahead and you search a T-pose or an A-pose reference, which is what you start with a character. I'll show you one of those in a minute. Some of them don't necessarily line up. Just a quick note about what makes an A-pose or a T-pose character reference sheet and why you need to be a little careful when you search for those online if you're not developing your own characters. So for one, you really want to watch what you search in Google. The first thing I searched was character sheet, just to show you. You get a whole bunch of character sheets for D&D, so none of those are good for us. So then I searched A-pose reference, and I got anything that had the word A-pose. And so I'm not going to open this tab because really I only got one A-pose out of this whole list, and the rest were just sketches of poses that people had done. Lots of nudity too. When you're modeling a 3D character, a lot of students assume that initially maybe you want to model them like a real person, no clothes, and then put the clothes on after. And if you're doing a cloth effect, you can do that, but that's not how most characters are made, because really we want them to bend with their clothes, and if we do that as a separate object, it's harder to render and you get more clipping. So normally you want to draw the character the way you want them to look at through most of the video game. Now, if you have a character that has a cape, and we'll go to that in a second, you would do just that cape as a separate element. So here's a person asking, would this be an A-pose? And for your 3D modeled shape, yes, the legs are separated, and the legs are separated about that amount in an A-pose or a T-pose. And then the arms are down at an angle like an A. Now, we used to default to a T-pose because that got the arms further away, and I'll show you some of those in a minute. But what happens is then the shoulders deform a lot. And what do I mean by shoulder deforming? I'll go ahead and show you for a second. If I'm here and I put my arms out like this, my shoulders move a lot, whether I move my arms up or down, right? That's called shoulder deformation. So if I have a character that maybe is just going to be holding a weapon, fighting with a sword, running through a game, I can go ahead and do an A-pose because they're not going to move that much. Now, if I have a character, I think I mentioned Nathan Drake before, who's going to be climbing up a lot of stairs and all this, I have my arms going up a lot. And so in that way, you might want to do a T-pose. That does mean that you have a lot more deformation that you're going to have to set up when that character moves, but it's an important concept to know. So once again, it's all thinking about your movement. Let's go back to these sheets. This is actually an A-pose. And this is a little close, but yeah, you're pretty standard A-pose. What happens is the arms are going down. It's aligned. You get your front, your side. A lot of people, especially in video games where you'll be seeing the back of the characters, draw the back as well. Some people do the top if the hands or the arm details are going to be important. Now, if you notice, the cape goes away in this back view because you want to see the details. And even sometimes if you have a character that has a lot of detail here, they'll take the arm away. You don't have to show. So in this character, you would probably model the superhero and you'd model the cape separately. And I found this forum on CG Society. If you're interested in this, you should check out CG Society. Now let's go to T-poses. And once again, we have set a lot of characters They're just looking at the form, and you'll have some that aren't actually T-poses. Like this is a reference pose guide, and notice she's not standing straight. That's going to be more of a 3/4 view. We use those for character designs. We'll kind of see what we get here. Not too bad. So let's go to this person's site. It's in their Wix, their concept art. And this is going to be kind of more your standard character art. So this is what type of stuff you'll find when you look for it online. This is going to be your T-pose, where they have their arms straight out there, have their legs separated, and this is going to be really good for that reference for modeling. These are still concept sheets, but they show you more the expression, what they'll look like when they've moved or when they're animated. And if I search character reference sheets, that tends to be more of what you get. A lot of stuff in 3/4 view, or even if they are at a front view, their weights aren't even. And we tend to keep their weights even for a T-pose because we can copy one side and just paste the other after we're done modeling.